just be two eyes to one lens, or like two to your two eyes. Either way, I'm watching you watching me. Yeah. Alright, guys, today we're going to be talking about something, I'm a social media marketing specialist. My boss throws around specialist pretty loosely around in my job. I don't think I'm a specialist by any means. But one thing I do to create a more engaging post, one that's a little bit more creative, kind of makes the viewer wonder, how did they do that? Is creating a moving image. What we're going to be doing today is just kind of taking the background as well as something in the foreground and, just kind of cropping it out and moving them. Maybe the background's getting further away and the foreground's getting closer, or vice versa. And, this kind of creates a 3D perspective on a 2D media or 2D platform, one of those two. But yeah, so we're just going to hop right into it and kind of take you along the process on how to create a moving image using Photoshop as well as Premiere Pro. So as you can see here, the image that I chose to use was a picture I took of a welder at my workplace, and I think welding shots are just incredibly cool because you get the sparks, you get, the aesthetic of just manliness. I don't know. Hardcore. It's cool. Either way, I think it's a cool aesthetic, and that's what we're going to be using today as our image to create the moving image. That's right. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is kind of select what we want in the foreground, and we're just going to outline that using the crop pen tool, I believe that's what it's called, and just kind of outline the welder that we see here and kind of get it so that we separate him from the background. So whatever image you're going to want to separate from the background, you're going to want to outline it first. And so you can see me doing this here. Of course, it's sped up because this took me quite a bit of time, just to get it that precise. Then I'm going to go back in, kind of subtract the outline, the stuff between his arms and his hands, to get that background away from him being the foreground. Yeah, so once we separated him from the background using the pen tool, we're just going to select the mask layer, and that's going to actually crop him from the background. Yeah, but not to brag, I think I did a pretty good job there, separating him from the background, and I'm just going to name that welder just because, usually when you do this, you're not going to have too many layers, but this just helps me keep organized. And so what I just did there is duplicate the background layer, because for this one I started off wanting to do multiple objects just to kind of be a little more creative with it and take out the object and maybe move that a little bit. So I did just repeat the process of going around these objects and separating them from the background and then naming them whatever so I can keep them straight. I also did the same for the welding sparks that you see there. I'm going to separate those from the background so I can move those. And then what you're going to want to do is get the background layer and kind of camouflage and kind of take out the objects that you cut out. So for me, it's the welder. I'm just going to take the background and kind of make it like he wasn't even there. I went more in depth into this. You actually don't have to make him disappear entirely. You could just blend it a few pixels, maybe like 20 pixels around his body, and you just blend the background, because if you have the background grow and then you have the object shrink, it's revealing, space behind the object that you're going to have to make up, because the background, there was no background, it was the object was there. So you're just going to want to blend that in and, kind of create a background that wasn't there. So that's what I did there. I did it a little bit more in depth than you probably need to, because I just did as much as I could, just because I don't know why, but you don't have to do that much. So once you blend in the background a few 20 pixels around whatever object and that, what you're going to want to do is then convert each object to a smart object. So that just allows you to actually create a transform key when you actually eventually go to the timeline, and the transform key just means that you can scale it. It's scalable now. So you're going to want to right click on every object and scroll down, and you're going to see convert to smart object. And yeah, select that, do it for every object, and bada bing, bada boom. I can't say that twice in 2 videos. Ka-chow, it's done. God. Alright, yeah, ka-chow, it's done. The object's smart now. If only it was that easy for me. So once you have your smart objects, you're going to want to bring up the timeline. And the timeline is kind of like a timeline in Premiere Pro, I guess. I don't know. It's just like a timeline. Yeah. Oh, that's why it's called timeline. So go to window, scroll down to timeline, click on timeline. It's going to bring up what you see here in the video, which is just more or less a Premiere Pro timeline kind of looking thing. So once you get to the timeline, you're going to want to select one of the objects, the smart objects first, preferably the background, just because once you move that, you can move the other objects in perspective to the background. So what you're going to want to do is click on the transform keyframe, which is the little clock looking thing underneath the object in the drop down menu. So once you click on transform, you click on the clock looking thing and make sure that your slider is dragged all the way over to the left, and once you click the clock, it's going to drop a keyframe, and that keyframe just means that at that moment you want the background to look exactly as it is. So you didn't change it at first, so that just means that it's going to be in those proportions. So once you do that, you're going to want to drag your timeline keyframe all the way to the right and then drop another keyframe, but then you're going to want to go in to the background. You can move the timeline to the side and then press Ctrl T to transform your background. Make sure it's selected first, otherwise you're going to transform another object to make sure it's the background or the one that has the keyframe. And then you're going to want to scale it up or down depending on, how you want this moving image to look. So once you have the background going, then you're going to want to go into the other objects and kind of repeat this process of dropping in the keyframes at the beginning of the timeline and marking a key, and then going to the end of the timeline, scaling the object either bigger or smaller, and placing that key there as well. And so when you drag it through the timeline, then you're going to be able to see the one object moving in comparison to the background. And it's kind of going to create this 3D effect, like I said earlier, on this 2D platform thing. I don't know. So yeah, once you have your timeline sorted out and you have your moving image kind of the way you want it, you're going to want to export it. So to do that, you're just going to go up to the file at the top of the page, go down to export, and then export video or render video. I think it's render video. It's render video. I'm sure it's render video. I knew that. See, mine. So once you go to render video, it's going to bring up the settings, and you could copy my settings. I think, yeah, they're pretty good. I had mine on high quality, 1920 by 1080p. My frame rate, I wanted it to be 60 frames a second, and that's just because I'm going to move mine to Premiere Pro. And if I slow down the video, which I probably will because this is moving kind of fast, once I slow it down, it's not going to, look clunky. It's still going to have, more frames to work with than, let's say 30. And then you slow it down by half, 15 frames a second. It's kind of clunky. So if I slow this down by half, it'll be 30 frames a second. So it's still going to be fairly smooth moving. So once you export that, we're going to bring mine into Premiere Pro. But if you're happy with yours and you don't want to do anything else, good, brilliant, you're done. But if you do want to do something a little bit more, maybe add a sound or another effect, then you can bring it into Premiere Pro. My moving object was a little bit more complicated. I mean, you could just do this with one object in the foreground moving. I did mine with like 2 or 3, and just kind of create a demo from it, see what you could do. So once I bring mine into Premiere Pro, you can see here I dragged my moving image into Premiere Pro, and it looks good, but it's moving a little bit fast. So I'm just going to slow down the speed of my clip to 50%, so instead of 5 seconds, it's 10 seconds, and the movement's going to be a little bit more subtle instead of ramped up and fast, but that's just how I wanted it. And then I'm going to add a welding sound effect that I have, and that's just, I just have that laying around, but now I've had it from a previous post that I kind of did similar to this. But I'm also going to actually add a lens flare, and I'll select which kind of lens flare I want out of the 3 options it gives me, just one to kind of match the spark of my welder, and then I'm going to have that lens flare actually move kind of the same way that we did the keyframes for the objects in the timeline. I'm going to do that in Premiere Pro with the lens flare and get the movement of it to follow that slow moving welding spark. So, it looks like the lens flare is originating from that welder spark. And then I'm also going to add keyframes for the brightness. I think I did every single frame, like 50% brightness, then 30% brightness, and then 50% brightness, and then 30% brightness, for the entire 10 seconds. It took a while. It was just, I don't know. Yeah, I think it turned out well, but you can see in the final product, it looks awesome. Kind of got a cool sound effect with a cool lens flare going with the welder move in the background scene. It's just awesome. And it's just kind of a cool post that, is going to grab more attention than just a regular image or maybe a video on its own of a welder. They're going to be like, wow, how did they do that? Wow. Yeah, cool. So here's the final product. Cool. I think that was 10 seconds. I don't know. I'll cut it. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned how to create a moving image. If the instructions were unclear, I'm sorry. It probably could have been way better, but you know, I try. But yeah, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me below. I'm got nothing else to do, just working 8 to 5 every day like a big boy. Also, make sure to check out my Instagram. Again, it is bumping now. I'll probably have a new post out, I don't know, soon. It's probably going to be another sunset because I took plenty of those over the weekend. Haha. But yeah, if you have any inquiries, I don't know if I've been saying that right the whole time, but if you do have any of those, feel free to reach out to me at my website. I have kind of a big video coming up. I think it's going to be pretty huge. It's going to be related to WordPress, something other than photography, so that's exciting. But yeah, hit me up, reach out. I'm running out of ways to say bye, so I'm going to do this. Bye!